Every empire collapses the same way, but never at the same time, and never with the world as connected as it is right now. For centuries, civilizations have risen, peaked, and fallen in a cycle of growth and destruction. Rome burned from within before it fell to outside forces. The French monarchy collapsed under the weight of debt. The Weimar Republic imploded under hyperinflation. The Great Depression shattered the global economy in 1929, and 2008 nearly froze the entire financial system. But nothing even across 2,000 years of data comes close to the pattern forming right now. I fed every major economic collapse in recorded history into a super simulation, 14 empires, 7 core metrics, thousands of data points, all aligned into one model. And when modern numbers were added, the result wasn't just concerning, it was shocking. Because the simulation detected 6 out of 7 collapse markers for the year 2025, automatically triggering the first phase of a predicted global breakdown. And what the system projected for the next 12 months is something humanity has never experienced before. This isn't a prediction, and it isn't fear-mongering. It's a map built from what has already happened to every empire that came before us. The simulation uses the collapse of Rome, Byzantium, the Ming Dynasty, the Ottoman decline, the fall of the French crown, the Panic of 1873, the Great Depression, Weimar Germany, Japan's 1991 crash, the 1997 Asian crisis, the dot-com bubble, and the 2008 financial meltdown. Each collapse brought unique circumstances. But beneath the surface, every one of them followed nearly the same structure. Extreme debt, currency distortion, resource strain, political division, loss of confidence, and finally an accelerating cascade that becomes impossibly fast to control. The question the simulation answers isn't, will a collapse happen? Collapses are normal. The question is, what happens when all global power centers begin to echo the same collapse pattern at the same time? And according to the simulation, 2025 is the first year in history where multiple cycles hit their breaking point together. To avoid bias, every empire in the simulation starts under the same rules: debt to GDP trends, currency stability, inequality, military spending, demographic pressure, and trade dependency. A second layer tracks collapse triggers events like crop failure, war, runaway inflation, banking instability, sudden interest rate changes, or credit contraction. A third layer measures public confidence, arguably the most important element of all. A system collapses when people stop believing it will survive. The simulation then searches the modern economy for matching patterns. If enough patterns align, it automatically transitions to the next stage: pattern formation, trigger, cascade, crash, and reset. When modern data was fed into the model, something unexpected happened. Instead of matching one historical collapse, it matched several. The current global economy resembles Rome's fiscal decay, France's inflation, Weimar's currency erosion, 1929's credit bubble, Japan's asset spiral, and 2008's shadow banking weakness. The model wasn't supposed to match that many patterns at once. Yet it did, and that's why it moved into Stage 1 instantly. Stage 1 is the silent stage, the period where the cracks are invisible to the public but obvious to history. Every collapse starts slowly. Rome increased taxes until families abandoned their land. France hid debt inside royal accounting until the economy suffocated. The U.S. stock market in 1929 soared through debt-fueled speculation right before the crash. In Japan, property prices skyrocketed on credit until the entire system buckled. In every case, people believed the economy was strong, right up until the moment it wasn't. The simulation shows the same silent curve forming now: debt growing faster than productivity, inflation outpacing wages, asset prices floating far above real value, and confidence quietly slipping even while markets appear stable. In the simulation, Once the pattern formation curve reaches a certain steepness, the system automatically jumps to stage 2. Modern data crossed that threshold in early 2024. That's when the simulation triggered the next sequence, the search for a collapse catalyst. Every collapse has a trigger 1 event that breaks the illusion of stability. For Rome, it was the debasement of silver coins. For France, it was a failed harvest and skyrocketing bread prices. For Weimar Germany, it was the printing of money to pay war reparations. For the United States in 1929, it was a sudden contraction of margin lending. For 2008, it was the collapse of subprime mortgage-backed securities. The trigger always looks different, but the psychological effect is always identical. Confidence breaks. In the 2025 simulation, the model predicts a trigger stemming from the debt market, a sudden lack of liquidity, meaning large institutions become unable or unwilling to lend. When lending stops, everything stops. Banks freeze. Companies panic. Households rush to secure cash. Markets seize up. And the simulation shows that once confidence breaks, the cascade becomes inevitable. The system tries to stabilize, but each attempt only accelerates the collapse. That's when the simulation transitions into the most violent part of the cycle, the cascade. The cascade phase is where collapses become unstoppable. The effects accelerate each other. Falling markets reduce confidence. Reduced confidence triggers withdrawals. Withdrawals squeeze banks. Banks tighten lending. Tightened lending freezes businesses. Frozen businesses cause layoffs. Layoffs crush demand. Crushed demand sinks markets further. This loop feeds itself until it snaps. The simulation shows this feedback loop forming at record speed in 2025. In previous collapses, the cascade took years. In 2008, it took months. In the simulation's 2025 scenario, it takes weeks. The first visible symptoms are rapid volatility spikes, massive asset sell-offs, and liquidity disappearing from financial markets. Then the currency begins to wobble. Foreign holders of U.S. debt start selling. Exchange rates swing violently. And for the first time in decades, global markets begin responding to American instability, not the other way around. This is where the simulation ends part 1 and prepares for the next stage, the moment the cascade becomes a full-blown crash. As the cascade phase accelerates, the simulation shows the collapse spreading beyond borders faster than any previous event in history. For Rome or France, collapse was local. For 1929, it was international but slow. For 2008, it was global but still fragmented across regions. But in the 2025 simulation, there is no fragmentation. Everything is tied together: supply chains, currencies, interest rates, digital banking, global debt markets, even algorithms that execute trades faster than humans can blink. When instability hits one node of the network, it jumps instantly to every other. The simulation shows Europe's debt markets reacting within hours, Asian markets following within minutes, emerging markets collapsing within seconds. The cascade spreads like electricity. Nations that rely heavily on imported energy and food begin to feel pressure first as prices swing wildly. Countries with high U.S. dollar exposure face liquidity shortages. And nations already struggling with inflation experience immediate shocks. The simulation displays a heat map of global stress turning red across every continent, revealing a world where no country, not even the strongest, can stand alone against a synchronized collapse. The simulation's next phase is chilling, the freeze. In every historical collapse, one event signals the collapse's point of no return when credit disappears. In 1929, margin lending evaporated. In 2008, interbank lending froze. And in every empire, from Rome to the Ming Dynasty, the economy seized because institutions stopped trusting each other. In the simulation's 2025 run, the freeze happens at extraordinary speed. overnight lending grinds to a halt. Risk premiums skyrocket. Banks, terrified of the Cascade, hold on to reserves. Credit that once flowed freely, mortgages, car loans, business lines, corporate issuance, even basic trade financing dries up. Corporations that rely on short-term funding suddenly can't roll over their debt. Small businesses struggle to pay suppliers. Large employers panic about meeting payroll. Financial markets begin operating in survival mode. And the simulation's confidence index, a composite of all historical collapse metrics, plunges straight down. According to the model, once confidence falls below a certain threshold, the cascade becomes irreversible. This is exactly the point where the simulation initiates the full crash. The simulation's crash event is not a single moment like a stock market fall, it is a multi-layered implosion. First, equity markets plunge, following the same parabolic shape seen in 1929 and 2008. Next, bond markets destabilize, with yields spiking uncontrollably. Then, the currency enters an unpredictable spiral, fluctuating wildly within minutes. The simulation shows liquidity slipping so quickly that price discovery, how markets normally figure out what something is worth, breaks. Assets trade at chaotic prices because no one knows what anything is truly worth anymore. In the simulation's visual, markets flicker between green and red as algorithms struggle to reconcile unprecedented volatility. Some nations attempt emergency rate cuts. Others impose capital controls. A few freeze markets temporarily. But every intervention makes markets more unstable, not less. The model highlights these interventions in bright orange flashes that represent attempts to stabilize the system, but each one accelerates the downward spiral. This is the same phenomenon recorded in the Great Depression and in emerging market collapses. When a system loses trust, stabilization attempts are interpreted as signs of panic. The simulation transitions from financial indicators to human impact. It's here that collapses become real. As the 2025 simulation enters its crash mode, the first public signs are rapid price increases, gasoline spikes, groceries fluctuate, essential goods jump in cost. Companies initiate mass layoffs as credit freezes. Job insecurity spreads. Households begin withdrawing cash, putting pressure on banks already struggling with liquidity. ATMs shorten withdrawal limits. Banks reduce hours. Governments make reassuring announcements, but these, historically, only accelerate panic. The simulation overlays footage from past collapses, lines outside banks in 2008, panicked crowds in 1929, empty shelves from inflation crises. The model predicts that the public response in 2025 would be faster and more global due to social media, instantaneous communication, and real-time contagion of fear. The simulation shows emotional volatility rising almost vertically. When fear becomes widespread, no system, no matter how technologically advanced, can stabilize itself quickly enough. Every collapse simulation has a breaking point, a moment when the system can no longer absorb shocks. For Rome, the breaking point was when tax collection stopped functioning. For France, it was when bread prices became unbearable. For Weimar, it was when currency value halved every day. In the 2025 simulation, the breaking point arises from a combination of three forces: extreme debt, rapid interest changes, and synchronized global stress. Together, they form a pressure the model classifies as systemically unmanageable. The simulation shows central banks attempting coordinated action, rate cuts, emergency lending, liquidity injections, asset purchases. But because every country is under pressure simultaneously, these measures fail to contain the collapse. The simulation highlights a phenomenon never before seen in the historical dataset: a globalized failure of confidence. Not regional, not continental, global. This is what causes the simulation to enter its most critical and revealing stage, the reset phase. As the simulation approaches the reset threshold, the chaotic indicators begin to flatten, not because the crisis is ending, but because the system has finally broken enough to begin restructuring. Historically, this is where societies reinvent their financial foundations. Rome shifted from silver to gold standards. France switched governments entirely. Weimar Germany abandoned its currency. After 1929, the United States rebuilt its banking system. After 2008, the world entered an era of unprecedented monetary intervention. In the simulation's 2025 run, the same reset begins forming, but with a twist. Unlike previous collapses, the simulation shows technology, specifically AI-driven economic models, playing a central role in stabilization. This is the first time in history where the model predicts a recovery not primarily driven by political reforms or central bank policy, but by algorithmic solutions capable of adjusting financial systems faster than humans can react. This marks the beginning of the reset phase, the moment where collapse gives way to transformation. As the simulation exits the cascade and enters the reset phase, something remarkable happens. The violent downward curves begin to level out. Not because conditions improve, but because they cannot collapse any further. This is the same moment seen in Rome's restructuring, the French transition to a new government, the stabilization after Weimar hyperinflation, and the reforms implemented after the Great Depression. Historically, this phase marks the beginning of a new system taking shape. In the 2025 simulation, the reset begins with nations attempting to re-establish stability through emergency controls, updated currency mechanisms, and coordinated international agreements. But unlike any past collapse, this reset is shaped not by kings, parliaments, or central bankers, but by algorithmic models built to optimize flows faster than humans can calculate. The simulation shows a world forced into modernization not voluntarily, but because outdated systems simply break under pressure. Digital infrastructure becomes the backbone of the financial reset, and the simulation shows a transition from analog monetary policy to AI-supported governance. During the reset phase, the simulation highlights 5 structural shifts that reshape the global economy. First, the U.S. dollar remains the world's reserve currency but weakened, sharing space with new digital reserve assets. Second, nations adopt multi-reserve systems, relying not on a single currency, but on baskets of commodities, currencies, and algorithmic stabilization assets that reduce reliance on any one country. Third, wealth concentration accelerates dramatically, with asset owners recovering fastest and wage earners navigating the hardest path, mirroring every collapse from ancient Rome to modern recessions. Fourth, governments expand their emergency authority, using technology to regulate markets, slow down capital flight, and control volatility. Fifth, artificial intelligence begins playing a central role in macroeconomic stabilization, using real-time data to adjust interest rates, liquidity, and capital restrictions at speeds no human institution can match. The simulation visualizes a financial world that looks familiar on the surface, but beneath, it operates with rules that no previous civilization has ever seen. The simulation predicts that the years following the 2025 crash, specifically 2026 to 2030, form what the model calls the transition window. This is a period where volatility remains high, global power realigns, and nations redefine their economic identities. Trade systems are rewired. Debt agreements are renegotiated. Weak economies are absorbed or restructured. Strong economies fight to maintain influence. This period mirrors the long tail of the Great Depression and the chaotic restructuring after the fall of empires, but compressed into a much shorter time frame due to modern technology. During these years, new winners emerge. Countries that adopt adaptive monetary structures, invest heavily in digital infrastructure, and integrate AI-driven economic systems flourish fastest. Meanwhile, countries resistant to change struggle, experiencing persistent inflation, unemployment, and declining global influence. The simulation shows that by the early 2030s, global financial power looks dramatically different from anything known before 2025. In a breathtaking visual, The simulation overlays thousands of years of collapse cycles onto the 2025 curve. Rome's fall spans centuries. France's collapse spans decades. The Great Depression and 2008 span years. But the 2025 simulation compresses collapse, contagion, crash, and reset into an unprecedented timeframe. The model highlights something astonishing: multiple collapse cycles, economic, political, demographic, technological syncing for the first time in recorded history. This synchronization creates what the simulation labels a rare convergence event, occurring once every few hundred years. The last time a similar convergence happened was the fall of Rome, which reshaped civilization. The simulation suggests that the 2025 convergence may mark another global turning point, one that replaces old systems with structures built for a far more interconnected world. The simulation doesn't claim to predict the future. Instead, it shows the trajectory the world is most likely to follow if historical patterns continue, and so far, the data matches more closely than any collapse in the model. As the simulation completes its run, a summary panel appears, an aggregation of every pattern, every collapse marker, and every converging cycle. The final conclusion is stark but not apocalyptic. The 2025 crash, according to the model, is not the end of civilization. It's the end of a cycle.